Okay, here's your quick tip. We had a request asking how to paint with palette knives, or how to use palette knives. So let's see if we can do this in a quick tip in a way that could be of a little help to you. First of all, we have, oh my gosh, there are so many palette knives, so many shapes of palette knives available that it's confusing. I don't think you need all of those. You just need to know how to use the palette knife as a tool. And of course, we as artists are going to buy way more than we need as far as tools go. We really only need 2 or 3 good palette knives that do for you what you need. First of all, we have 2 basic shapes. One is the trowel shape, as you see, like this, and one is the flat shape like that. That's just a matter of preference as to which one you want. I prefer working with a trowel shape because it gives me a little bit more leverage. Then you have, that's the shape of the whole knife, and then you have many shapes of blades. Now we have the rounded blade like this, which is the good basic mixing palette knife as well as painting palette knives. Then we have little narrow palette knives that have little thin pointed blades. Then we have the little triangular shaped palette knives like this, and of course we have these palette knives that are good for scraping or scraping palettes or scraping in rock shapes and that sort of thing. So they all have specialty uses, but what I like to do is to start out with just the major palette knife that I use for both mixing paint and for painting. And if I'm doing palette knife painting, I usually do majority of it with this knife. The others will come into use as I see a special use for them. So I just, with this little quick tip, want to show you just some basic strokes or basic ways of applying the paint with the palette knife, and hope that you could take it from there. For one, picking up the paint with the palette knife. Now, if you pick up the paint with the back of the palette knife like that, so that you have the paint actually located on the surface of its back. If you need to do further mixing or further control of how much paint, you can put it down, you can pull and push, or see, like that. That's a basic mixing stroke. Then when you're going to make a shape with that or going to apply the paint, you then hold the palette knife at an angle, about a 45-degree angle, and pull towards yourself so that the paint rolls up on the back of the knife. And then to apply it, you simply hold it at that angle, and as you apply it to the canvas, you slightly tilt it so that the back of the palette knife touches the canvas like that. Now, with practice, you learn how much paint you want to pick up with the back of the knife. You can see that if I pick up a great deal of paint and I hold it now, then tilt it back so it's sort of like almost like an iron when you're ironing clothes, and pull it in whatever direction you want it to go. See, you pull it with fast strokes or slow strokes, and as you're applying the paint, you turn the knife towards the canvas itself, so that the knife is actually scooting across the canvas. Doing this where the whole knife is touching the canvas, sort of like an iron, you can make a very smooth area of paint. If you want a more textured area of paint, you can use shorter strokes like this. See, you could use strokes where the edge of the blade makes the stroke like that, or you could use strokes where the point of the blade makes the stroke. Let me get a different color here so that you can distinguish that stroke. Let's see. Now here's a good idea. When you're going to do something different with a palette knife, always start with a fresh, clean knife. Okay, so if I needed to make a shorter stroke, I would do so. That's not, let's get that a little bit darker so that you can see it a little bit better. If I needed to make a shorter stroke, I pick up the paint with the tip of the knife and do something like this. One of the neat things about palette knife palette knife painting is that you can scrape off and reapply if you like. So you can literally paint an entire area with the palette knife just by the way you hold it, so that the paint is rolling up on the back of the knife like that, and then pulling down as you turn the knife and get it acting more like a more on its flat surface like that. I want to show you another little trick. If you can scumble with a palette knife, so you'll always need, for scumbling with a palette knife, you always need a color that's either lighter or darker than the color underneath it. But you can catch how much paint you need for the shade like this. Wipe off the top like that, and then you hold the knife sort of flat like that, and then just let the paint glide over. And so if I do another stroke like that, we use that stroke a lot of times for creating a waterfall, you see. And you can jerk the stroke and turn it and let it fall like that. The other thing, let's just get that smoothed out just a little bit right there. The other thing I want to show you here is that if you need a sharper stroke, you would use a sharper pointed knife. So if you need a sharper edge, for example, you'd use a sharper pointed knife. And there we go. And you see what I'm doing there? I'm giving a little bit of a turn like this, kind of rotating it a little bit in my hand as I'm pulling it down. Now, there we go, see, like that. And so, see, by using that kind of motion of controlling the back of the paint on the back of the palette knife, you can create a number of kinds of things. Waterfall's a good one for that. And then the last thing I want to show you, now this is not all inclusive, this just gets you going with exploring with the palette knife. The other thing I want to show you is how to make a straight line with a palette knife. And that is, or straight edge, I should say. You gather the palette, always gather the paint up in a roll on the back of the knife like that. You wipe off the palette knife, the front of the palette knife. You hold it like this, and you move it up and down, and then pull it forward. And you see that gives you that nice straight edge. You can use that for like the sides of buildings or the sides of rocks or different things like that. So that's just a kind of a little introduction into the things that you can do with palette knife. And beyond that, it's a matter of the color mixing and the value differences and those kinds of things. So I hope that you can have fun with that. And there's your quick tip.